Are you a bigot?
Not at all. Probably the least of anybody you've ever met.
Because?
Because I'm not. I'm a person that has common sense. I'm a smart person. I know how to run things. I know how to make America great again. This is about making America great again.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining us on the Malzberg panel, first panel of the day, Noah Rothman, assistant online editor of Commentary Magazine, and Rick Ungar, senior political contributor for Forbes.com and co-host of Steele Ungar on SiriusXM. Okay, Rick, let's start with you on the latest news today. I read the news today, oh boy.
Trump, not fair. Using Bueller references throws me off.
CBS News, New York Times poll, Trump more than doubled Ted Cruz nationally. He's leading in New Hampshire. He's leading in Iowa. In South Carolina, he's way ahead, and he's gone up about 8 points since the state and the comments on banning Muslims. You have a Rasmussen poll today that a plurality of Americans, not to speak of an overwhelming majority of Republicans, believe that he's right on his proposal on banning Muslims. Isn't the media and even the mainstream Republicans, aren't they just out of touch with America?
Well, I'm a little bit confused about the plurality of Americans supporting it. The Bloomberg poll I saw today, I believe it said that 37% of Americans supported. Certainly the large percentage of Republicans supported. It was 68%.
46% of the Rasmussen poll favor.
Well, but that obviously wouldn't be a plurality of support if it's 47%. So yeah, there are certainly people who do support him. And I'm not the least bit surprised that he's up in the polls. I don't know if it was here or somewhere else, but I've been saying all week that I expected him to go up in the polls from this. This is the kind of thing that Trump followers, Trump believers want to hear, along with other Americans. I think they're wrong, but I freely acknowledge this is what they want to hear.
Noah?
Yeah, I think Rick's perfectly right. I don't necessarily see that this issue has propelled Donald Trump to the position that he's in these polls. If we look at polls about a month ago, we saw that Ben Carson and Donald Trump's support really overlaps. One collapses, the other gains. That was to be expected, and it's happening. At the same time, I do think that there's probably a plurality, if not even a majority, of Americans who support this. Americans, when they're scared, support a lot of things that are dubious. A lot of Americans in polls support the idea that we should strip Americans of their constitutional right to arm themselves, even if they've not been indicted for any sort of a crime, that they're on some sort of a secret government list. That's a terrible idea. It nevertheless gets a lot of public support.
All right, by the way, it's a plurality because it's 46% favor it in this poll and 40% are against it in this Rasmussen poll. But, you know, what do you make, Rick, of... he's not threatening to run as a third-party candidate. He's just saying, I signed a pledge, everybody signed a pledge, and the RNC made promises, and if they renege on how they treat me, and whether it comes to delegates or primaries or whatever, then I reserve the right to break my pledge too.
It won't surprise you a bit that that's totally okay with me, but I will defend him on one point. It's not just the RNC who made promises. You've seen all the other candidates who signed that pledge say that they promised to support Trump if he were the nominee, and I think they're going to bail out on that. So I can't blame Trump if he does the same thing.
Noah, what do you expect? Do you expect that question to come up at the debate next Tuesday on CNN to the other candidates? You pledge to support the nominee if Donald Trump's the nominee. I think that's an inevitable question. How do you think they'll handle it?
You know, maybe, but I think they'll handle it the way they've been handling it in interviews. I will support the nominee, but I don't believe Donald Trump will be the nominee. It's how they get out of it. And that's a smart way to do it because it's frankly so academic, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Donald Trump really has until spring when it comes to filing deadlines in order if he really wants to make an independent bid, but he'll not be included on a lot of ballots, including Ohio, if that's the case. It requires a ton of money. We don't know whether or not he's going to invest in it. And even so, I mean, we have stories now about the GOP RNC preparing for a brokered convention. I mean, we get these stories every cycle. The field is going to winnow substantially. To suggest that a three-man race, even a four-man race, we're not going to be able to get to 1,200 delegates in Cleveland, I find that to be just far-fetched.
All right, let's move to this story. The Congressional Budget Office, and I don't remember the last time I did a story in the Congressional Budget Office.
2014 when they came out with the same report.
Well, Obamacare will reduce work hours equivalent to 2 million jobs in the next decade because of all the incentives not to work or to work less. This according to the CBO. And you know what? It really, Noah, it's true. We've seen it happening with the number of employees hired, et cetera, and we haven't even felt the brunt of Obamacare when it comes to how it's going to affect the average American yet.
No, a lot of Obamacare has not been implemented. We are never going to see the Cadillac tax implemented. We're never going to see the employer mandate implemented. These are the kind of things that keep this law funded, keep it viable. The fact that they're politically toxic in order to implement them means that there's going to have to be substantial reform to this law. It's not going to come until 2017, and it could be a Republican implementing that.
I got to say, Steve, first of all, I really appreciate you including the last part of that sentence. I mean that sincerely. Most people who've been reporting on this today in conservative media have left off the part that points out that this is not companies firing people because of it. It's them making the choices they make. So I appreciate that.
Well, I don't know what point I made exactly.
No, the point you made was this is going to be people cutting back on their own. They're not going to be laid off or something because of this.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Well,
Who's going to cut back? Cutting back on their own hours?
Yes. Read what you just said again.
No, I said that we haven't felt the brunt of it yet
Well,
because it hasn't been implemented. Obama has delayed the employer mandate and the Cadillac tax.
You were doing so well. You were telling it what the report said. But let me tell you the good and bad that there's part of this that you will like when I say. Part of that we know is going to be a good thing. People who would rather be home taking care of their children than working but had to do part-time work to get their insurance, they will have an option not to. What you won't like is that the reason they have that option is they're getting their subsidies. The other thing you won't like, there are going to be people who will avoid work because of that. You won't like that.
Guys, got to end it there. We'll have lots more to talk about as this moves along, I'm sure. Rick and Noah, thank you very much. Richard Pearl, former Assistant Secretary of Defense, is next. Don't go away.